story is one that we heard before, but it's well connected with the Chassidus that we're going to say later on. Once, the Rebbe Rashab was walking with his son, Yosef Yitzchak, who would later become the Rebbe. As they walked, the Rebbe Rashab was explaining a very deep and complicated godly topic. At one point, he stopped walking, but his son, Yosef Yitzchak, who would later become the Rebbe himself, was so concentrated on his father was saying that he didn't notice his father stopped and he kept walking. His father, the Rebbe Rashab, called him by name. He said, Yosef Yitzchak. And the previous Rebbe ran to his father, and the Rebbe Rashab told him a very deep wisdom. He said, the difference between human intellect, between Seichel Anushi, and how it understands godliness, and godly intellect. Human intellect, Seichel Anushi, said the Rebbe, starts with intellect, with logic and understanding, and reaches finally a level of faith in Hashem. Because it finally realizes that human intellect, that Seichel Anushi, is limited. And it compels the person to realize there's something higher than his own limitations. And that is godly intellect, which brings him into the realm of faith, which opens him up to a whole new level. Godly intellect, on the other hand, starts with faith. It starts with belief in an unlimited creator, and finally it internalizes that faith into intellect. The amazing divine providence of what happened here is the house that the Rebbe Rashab stopped in front of later became the headquarters for the Russian secret police, for the GPU. The previous Rebbe would be called there for an interrogation, and one of the questions that they asked him, what is the difference between human intellect and godly intellect? And he gave him the answer that his father had told him. This house was the house where the Rebbe Rashab stopped. And he explained it to the previous Rebbe. And this story encapsulates an idea. A word from a Rebbe is able to return and have an effect many years after it was said. A variation on the same theme. The Rebbe Rashab once asked his father, the Rebbe Mirage, sometime when the Rebbe Mirage would talk about saying Chassidus, he would use a term, reden Chassidus, to speak Chassidus. Sometime he would use the term zogen Chassidus, to say Chassidus. His son, being a very smart person, understood that when his father said a difference between say Chassidus and give over Chassidus, whatever the difference is between reden and zogen, that his father had something in mind, and he asked him, what is the difference? Why do you use these two different terms when you talk about teaching Chassidus? His father, the Rebbe Mirage, said, when I say reden Chassidus, that's when I'm saying over Chassidus to people who are a vessel to be able to receive and internalize it. When I say zogen Chassidus, when the Chassidus I'm saying and the people who are hearing it are not fitting vessels to be able to consciously understand what I'm saying. Nevertheless, the teaching would be received by them and have its effect on them, even though they didn't understand it, at a later time. Or if not on them, it would affect their children or even their grandchildren. This is what the Rebbe Marash said from his own mouth. It's not just a story that's being made up. That his Hasidus, even if the person didn't understand it, would affect him, his children, and his grandchildren. And from this story, our Rebbe tells us, we can learn two things. How precise and exact is every move and expression of a Rebbe in general, and in particular, everything a Rebbe tells someone. And the second thing, the greatness of Zagan Hasidus by a Rebbe, even though we're not vessels to really understand what he's saying, even the time when he's teaching and the students are not internalizing what he's saying, but hidden in an essential way is the essence of the Rebbe is going into that person, and the proof is after a long time, either with them or their children or their grandchildren, that teaching that he said comes to fruition. So we are assured that even when we only hear a teaching of the Rebbe, and we don't even understand it, that teaching dwells in us in a hidden way. And the reason our Rebbe says it dwells in us in a hidden way is the teaching of Torah is not just an idea that goes in one ear and goes out the other. When a Rebbe says Chassidus, that godly idea becomes essentially unified in the one who hears the idea. And it dwells in him. And that's because it says these words about the words of Torah are like fire. Therefore, their action is like fire that purifies and clarifies the subject who is the listener, because the nature of fire is to rise up and it works immediately. But sometimes its effect is apparent only after a long time. So this story tells us the difference between Seichel Anushi, human intellect. Human intellect finally brings one to faith, and godly intellect, where you start with faith, and finally you internalize it into intellect. And the Hasidus that we're going to give over from the Alter Rebbe will be talking about these levels from a book that he wrote, the second book of Tanya, called Shar HaYichud V'Amunah, the Gate of Unity. That will be the intellectual level, and Amunah, which will be faith. Now I see that Marvin is so mesmerized that he's not even coming out onto the stage. Marvin, did you like that story?
I like the story, but my hand stick fell out.
It knocked it. You're lucky it didn't slip to the ground there, Marvin. Marvin, we know you finally woke up. We're aware of that.
Yeah, wake up, you didn't, from your dreams of Galus. Wow, Bezalel.
Yeah?
You know, these stories you tell, they make me very upset.
Why?
Oh, boy!
Why?
Oh, boy, why?
Marvin? Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you why. Hey, Mort. Hey, fiddle boy over there. Should I tell him why?
Tell him why.
Why? Because, you know, people think they're just stories. These aren't just stories. When people hear these stories, they can get inspired to learn Torah and do mitzvahs or things like that. Oh, you're making my... I'm going to file a union grievance. Oh,
Marvin,
boy.
You wouldn't have a job if those stories didn't work.
Yeah, that's true. Job security, yeah.
He's the old and foolish king.
Yeah, you're right. You know what? I have an idea. Let's make a compromise.
Oh, okay. The compromise.
By the way, most people who make a compromise with me usually end up on the bad side. Besides for Bezalel. My compromise is, how about one of those joke songs of yours? Because those make me so happy.
Let's have a joke song.
Great.
Okay. If the mikveh was mashka,
If the mikveh was mashka,
and I was a duck,
and I was a duck,
I swim to the bottom and I never come up. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get my Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate? The mikvah's not mashka.
The mikvah's not mashka.
And I'm not a duck.
Hey, I'm not a duck.
When I swam to the bottom, I was swimming. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get my Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate? Merciful King.
Merciful King.
All the work is done.
Hey, all the work is done.
Don't you think it's time we could have some fun? Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get my Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate? All the angels in the heaven. And the fish in the sea are asking for Mashiach,
We're asking for Mashiach.
like you and me. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate? Hey, Mister, I ain't lying. The people down here that are sick and dying. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get my Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate? Now come on, children.
Come on, children.
We're gonna have some fun.
We're gonna have some fun.
You ain't seen nothing like the Holy One. Tell me how long do I have to wait? Can I get my Mashiach now? Or must I hesitate?
Hey, da da da, ba 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 ba.
We explained there are two different ways how Hashem unifies with the worlds. The lower unity is where Hashem brings the worlds into existence and they feel themselves to exist separate from Hashem, even though He's continually bringing them into existence. And that's indicated by the second line of the Shema Yisrael, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuso Li'olam Vo'ed, bless the glory of His kingship, bless the name of His glory. His kingship is forever and ever, and the ever and ever is forever in space, Li'olam, and in time, Vo'ed. So that's how Hashem is connected to space and time. He's always bringing it into being every moment. But the creatures feel separate. They don't feel that it's Hashem that's keeping them alive. And that's called the lower unity. Second is a level called the higher unity, Yichud Elah. And that's how Hashem is unified with His attributes in the world of Atzilus, which is symbolized by this name, a Yud and a Hey, and a Vav and a Hey. This symbolizes the 10 attributes. The Yud symbolizes the attribute of wisdom, of Chachma. The Hey symbolizes the attribute of understanding, Bina. The Vav symbolizes the attributes of emotional attributes, love and fear and mercy and so on. There's 6 of them. That's a Vav is the 6th letter of the Aleph. And the Hey, the final Hey, symbolizes the level of Malchus, which that is the godly speech that brings the worlds into being. That's the level that's connected on the lower unity. To explain this upper unity, we explained in earlier chapters the lower unity, is how Hashem is always bringing the world into creation. Like it says, forever Hashem, your word stands in the heavens. And if Hashem would stop saying the letters that are standing in the heaven would go away. But the higher level of unity is where he is unified with his attributes. Those attributes are emanated and revealed through a process of powerful holding back and restraint and contraction, which in Hebrew is called a tzimtzum, a contraction of the infinite light. In order for attributes to be revealed, the infinite light has to be contracted, or else everything would be infinite light. And the mystical principle of this tzimtzum, of this contraction of the infinite light, is manyfold and very complicated to explain. Here, the Alter Rebbe explains in very general terms. He says, before the original contraction of the light, everything was only simple, infinite, godly light. Pure and simple light of infinite godliness. But when this contraction, when this tzimtzum happened, Hashem's infinite capacity for holding back the infinite was revealed. That's the capacity to hold back and conceal. And this capacity for limitation and finitude is also Hashem's, also unlimited, but it's unlimited holding back. And it had been previously submerged within his infinite power to spread out. So again, the power to hold back and restrain was existing by Hashem, but it was not manifest before this contraction happened. And in order for worlds to exist, Hashem brought into play this power of restraint and holding back. The first primordial anthropomorphic. You know what that means, anthropomorphic? It means the shape of a man. So like when the prophet sees the man on the throne, it's a much lower level on this, but that's the idea. The first manifestation of the godly man, and people laugh, what's there, a big man sitting in the sky? No. It's how Hashem brings his attributes into a way that we connect with him. And the first one is a level called the original man. In Hebrew it's called Adam Kadmo. And that Adam Kadmo is the highest state of existence after the original holding back. It's the primal thought, the first thought that contains and is the source of all subsequent emanations and creations, which is contained in a number of 50,000 50-year cycles, or 50,000 levels of 50. And this level of the thought of Ak, the Adam Kadmon, sees all these 50,000 50-year cycles all at one glance and contains them in one thought. Every angel, every power, every level of all the spiritual worlds, all the way down to a blade of grass in our physical world. And the wind that makes that blade of grass move and every molecule and every star in our physical world throughout the span of 50,000 year cycles, and it contains all of it in one thought. And that thought includes the godly desire and delight for each of those levels in those 50,000 50-year cycles. So that's called the first thought of Ak. He sees everything that was and is and will be all at one glance. Be happy. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Red
See you,
Devil.
David.
But since that primordial thought, since that first thought of Ak, which is a thought of the whole chain of descent, is such a huge thought and very powerful, for all practical purposes, it's infinite. Therefore, a new and more powerful contraction is needed, and the metaphor for that contraction is a beard. And the hairs of the beard indicate very thin tubes, which contract and channel the godly energy. In the esoteric lore, this beard metaphor is known as the tzimtzum of the dikna, the contraction of the beard. Think of letters, which are vessels that contain a thought of a desire. When you want something, it pops in your brain that you want it, and that realization you want it is contained in letters of thought. And the thought of that, so those letters are like these hairs that are a reducing valve to bring down your power to want anything into a specific desire. And that desire pre-exists any idea of how to accomplish that desire. And that idea of how to accomplish that will be called chachma, and that will be called wisdom. But the desire is the precursor for any kind of intellectual knowing how to accomplish a desire. In a more simple way that we can understand possibly better, these beard hairs can be understood like electric wires. Electric wires contract and reduce electrical current. For example, the generator in Niagara Falls generates a very big shot of electricity that's reduced through very large cables, which bring the electricity to switching locations in big cities. And there it's further reduced into smaller overhead cables, like we see on the telephone poles and the electric poles, until it's reduced into small wires in the wall of a house. And then finally it's reduced enough that it can go into a light bulb and light up the light bulb. So the lighting up of the light bulb is symbolized by this yud, the wisdom of the world of Atzilus. But the inflow of godly energy comes from the crown of that yud, from the thorn on top of it, which is the bottom of the hair that feeds the godly energy into that level. Back to the mystic metaphor of hairs, the life force that animates a hair is very tenuous, to the point when you cut it, you don't feel it at all. So that is the metaphor of how small the godly and reduced the godly energy is that is coming through those hairs. And that's showing a very, very powerful form of tzimtzum, of holding back the godly energy. And the underlying purpose of all the contractions is to condense the light in order to enable it to become enclosed within the vessels of the 10 spheres of the world of Atzilus, so that from there it's possible to create worlds that feel separate from godliness. Are we ready for a nigga?
Wow. We want an encore.
Ready? Fully ready? Back to you, Gonzalo!
So it's only after the infinite life dresses itself in those 10 vessels of the world of Atzilus that we can speak about the level that the Rambam tells us that Hashem is the knower, he's the knowledge, and he is the known. And by knowing himself, he knows all of creation. We can't speak about that until the godly life force has been contracted down and fits itself into these 10 spirits of the world of Atzilus. The vessels of Atzilus then become the neshama, they become the soul and the life force of the worlds that feel themselves separate all the way down to our world where we feel completely separate from Hashem, to the point we wonder, is Hashem around at all? And the soul of our existence are these 10 spheros of the world of Atzilus. Like it says, by knowing himself, he knows all the creation. All this can only come about after those powerful contractions have brought the contraction of the light and enabling it to get small enough to fit into these very high vessels of the world of Atzilus. And without that contraction into the vessels of Atzilus, it's not at all appropriate to say that he's the knower, and he's the knowledge, and he's the known. Because the whole category of knowledge cannot be ascribed to Hashem. Even in so exalted a manner, like we're saying, he's the knower, you can't describe that to Hashem himself. He's not within the realm of knowing and knowledge at all. He's infinitely elevated, above even the level and the bounds of wisdom. Wisdom is the first revelation in the world of Atzilus, the first of those vessels, and Hashem is infinitely removed and higher and exalted from that. So therefore, when we say that he's the knower, we're restricting him to one attribute, which is knowledge. Or when we say he's kind and he's merciful, when we say he's the knower, we're not saying he's the kind one. We're not saying he's the merciful one. But Hashem transcends all of those details, and he acts to connect with the creations and the emanations through those attributes called the 10 spheres. That's how he connects with us, even though he's infinitely higher and removed from them. So in relation to him, the level of wisdom is considered equal to the level of physical action. Our goal, the Alter Rebbe says, is not to explain in detail how Hashem works. It's incumbent upon us to believe with complete faith matters that are revealed to us, that he and his attributes, which are the vessels, called the spheros, are one. He is one with those vessels. That is the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be he, and his will, and his wisdom, and his understanding, and his knowledge are completely and perfectly one with him, with his essence and being. And he alone, you have a question?
Yeah, is that possible to achieve?
Hashem can achieve the faith. Of course it's possible to achieve faith. He alone is exalted by infinite elevations above the level of wisdom and intellect and comprehension. So on the one hand, and this is the conundrum, he's infinitely transcends intellect and comprehension. On the other, he's totally unified with these attributes, which he emanated from himself. So on one hand, he's infinitely removed. On the other, he's completely unified. And it is beyond the realm of human comprehension to comprehend this. These two opposites together. How could he be infinitely exalted? At the same time, he's completely unified with those attributes. Therefore, we use faith to apprehend it, to realize it. Faith takes us higher than intellect. And that's why in the Zohar, the attributes of the Holy One are called the secret of faith. And that's the faith that transcends intellect. For this concept cannot be grasped intellectually, only through faith. And since Hashem is infinitely exalted above intellect, intellectual means are inadequate to grasp his absolute union with the spheres in the world of Atzilus. To repeat ourselves, which those spheres is divine wisdom and kindness, and therefore the Zohar calls them the secrets of faith. I see that
Out of the corner of his eye.
the holy old puppet is ready to do his thing. Uncle Hershey?
Yep.
Would you like to interview the puppet tonight?
Oi!
No, right on the head.
No, really?
So we can achieve that. Can we achieve such unity?
No, God does, but we,
No.
through our faith, we can have some apprehension.
Apprehension.
Yeah.
Like even during davening?
Especially during davening.
If that's what you're thinking about, and you're concentrating on that, then
Then it's possible to achieve.
I think so.
Apprehension is, you need comprehension.
I don't know, they translate it as
Okay, everybody, it's time for the Jewish Experience portion of this program, where we actually have the Swiss
When you apprehend
to
someone,
interview
you
the
grab
3,000-year puppet.
We
who-
come in.
He's been there. I mean, he was there, he was everywhere, he saw it, he's still seeing it,
the nature of
and he's gonna be able to give it over. So, here we go.
Happy birthday to Hoishi!
Ah, it's
Happy
Hershey's birthday.
birthday to Hoishi!
That's a big
Happy birthday to Hoishi! Happy birthday, Hoishi!
Thank you very much, thank you.
You know, it's Hoishi's birthday.
I give brachas to the whole audience here, that they should all be happy, and they should all be satisfied in the service of Hashem, and that they should be continue to reach higher and higher and higher with gesund, with health, and
Amen.
with happiness. So,
And they should reach, for some of us, their 6,000th puppet birthday.
right, maybe you've been around 3,000 years, you know, and it doesn't get old. That's big stuff. Just saying, that's big stuff.
Yeah. You're big stuff, Hoishi. I love you, baby.
I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight here, but
Well, okay, then you'll be slightly
Less
not
stuff.
as big
Don't be
stuff.
slightly less
You'll
stuff.
still be big stuff. Don't worry, Hoishi.
I know, appreciate it. Thank you very much, appreciate it. You
So-
in the back, I thank you very much also.
Yeah.
Thank you
all
for
of
being
you.
here. Thank everybody for being
Yeah.
here. Okay.
Well,
so,
Parshas Chukas.
and what is Chukas all
Well,
about?
we start
The
off
whole
with
thing
some-
is we have 3 levels of mitzvahs in the Torah. We have
Yeah. Wait, 1 second. Leib, how's what the 3 levels are? I'm going to give you a quiz after this. So you better be listening instead of running your froggy mouth, okay? Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
Hoishi.
so anyway, we have the mitzvahs that we think we know what we're doing, it's just taking care of everybody and everything. Then we have eidos, which are things that represent and celebrate certain things in the times of our life and memorialize certain things we've been through, like the Seder and other things. And then we have Chukas,
And the soldiers, especially in the Navy.
big time. And then we have Chukas. What's the whole Indian of Chukas is? It's mitzvahs that we do purely of Avodas Hashem that we don't particularly understand. In fact, Solomon the Melech couldn't even understand them, but we do them because Hashem asked us to do them, even if we don't understand them. So this parsha is all about mitzvahs that we don't understand, but we know we have to do them. We have to do them to serve the Eibishter. So
Yeah, so interestingly, what's the first one? The first one is the red. Wie sagt man nach Heifer? Red Heifer,
is
yeah.
that heifer or is
The
that
red heifer. It's gewonnen a rote cow. It was a red cow. No,
Not Barbara heifer.
no,
but,
definitely not Barbara Streisand. It was a red cow.
Okay.
Trust me, I once tried to call Barbara Streisand the red cow. I got such a smack in my
Smack in
beard.
your
Oh,
took us
fuck.
up the ruckus, I know. That's a big
Anyways, the
problem.
red cow, which this was something which was very, very hard to understand. Okay?
Well, you know, the reason it was hard to understand is because it purified you if you need to be purified. But if you didn't need to be purified and you touched it, you became tummy. How does that happen? That's the Chukas. We don't know.
Well, what's interesting though is this thing also, it shows us something very interesting. Is you know in Hasidus there's a concept of Rotzu, right? Betzalel is a concept Rotzu and Shuv,
Yeah.
right? Tell me if I'm explaining it right. I don't know the English so good. It's like it's kind of like emanation and withdrawal. Yeah, like one goes out and one comes in. It's almost like Reishi, I'll give you in a language you understand better. Okay? One is like you know the market has a a recession, and one is it has a bull market on a what's the other
Bear
one?
market,
On a bear market. Yeah, it was very bare. There was nothing there. Anyways, so there's a concept like this in Yiddishkeit, right? And in Hasidus especially. And it's one of them, like learning Torah is Ratzu, right? We're going out, we're going closer to Hashem. And then Shuv is we bring it back down to do mitzvahs, right?
Right.
Now, what's interesting is this red cow, right?
Yep.
Don't ever call your wife this. This red cow, this red cow, right? It had two things. One, they would burn it with a fire, right? Leib health, they would burn it.
Boin it.
B-O-I-N, burn. They would burn it.
Boin it.
They would burn it with a fire. This is the rotzu, because a fire is rotzu. It goes, hoppa, skate, right? And then they would put in a water, house slave. They would put in a Hoshis, you listening?
I'm listening.
I can tell my puppet eyes after this many years, like
I
it's
know.
hard to see.
Listen, at
You know what I see over
2,000
there? I see like a
question is,
blur
do you have
over
any
there, and
idea-
I think it's Hoshi. I'm actually
Do
talking
you have
to the
any
table.
idea
but
what you're
whatever.
actually saying? That's the question.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
But anyways, but what I think I'm saying is that, and then there's shuv, right? They're coming down because they would put this red heifer in the water, right?
Right.
And then they would spritz it down. So this red cow has both of these inyonim. This thing has both of these concepts. The concept of ratzo, of the fire, burning it, and the concept of the water, of bringing it back down. Now, this is one of the things we learn from this.
No.
Is that the ratzo and the shuv, in other words, it's not just the learning Torah. This is very important. And it's not just the doing mitzvahs. This is very important. But we have to do both. These are both equally important things because you have to have a ratzo and a shuv. In other words, you have to want to come closer to the Eibishter all the time, but you also got to bring it down here on this world so we can bring Mashiach.
Amen.
Yeah, so this is a part of the thing over here. It's interesting. I was there,
I know.
So you know what they did? They would actually split this thing from the red cow. They would split it into three parts.
Correct.
And they would put it in three different places. Right? They was to use in different ways. One of them, what they would do, they would put it as a reminder for Bnei Yisrael. Wait a second, what's the reminder? By the way, this is something, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was help from him. You heard from this guy? Yeah. So I was there by the Fabrengen, and he said something very interesting. And by the way, this shows you who the Lubavitcher Rebbe was. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says that why you have to have a reminder, he says it's to remind everybody that it's not enough to work on other people, because a Jew will want to only work on other people, but it's a reminder that you have to dedicate time to work on yourself too. Can you imagine how special the Lubavitcher Rebbe is? That he assumed not only for him, but for all his Hasidim, that of course a Jew is going to want to work on other people, not going to want to work on himself, and there needs to be a reminder to work on yourself. You would think it's the other way around, right? That you work on yourself, and you need a reminder to work on other people.
Right.
The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, no, a Jew he wants to work on other people all the time, that he needs a reminder to work on himself.
Right.
Isn't that something, Hoshi?
Well, you got to work on yourself first before you can work on somebody else.
You see, you're so smart, Hoshi. For a little
That's
kid,
why I'm here.
for a little young kid like
Just a
you,
little bit,
who
that's
just
right.
had what? Like I think you're still in the double digits
I
even.
am
You're not even in triple
I'm not
digits
even
yet.
a big deal yet.
Yeah,
Right.
when you hit four
I got
digits
a
like me,
long way to
Hoshi.
go. You're
Oh,
talking.
when you hit, first of all, let me tell you, when you hit 4 digits like me, oi, is your back gonna hurt?
I know.
Oi.
Life is even greater.
But it's good
You
stuff.
gotta take magnesium.
Oh. By the way, something very interesting here, because the Rambam talks about this red cow, the red heifer. He's like,
Yeah.
this red heifer, and he talks about this, and he says something very interesting. The Rambam talks about this, and he says that the last one, right, is going to be a last one, and it's going to be made by King Moshiach, right?
Right.
Now, this is, okay, this makes sense, because this is a thing of halacha, it's a thing of Jewish law.
That's
And
right.
the Rambam in this book is talking about Jewish law. But then the Rambam throws in a very surprising thing, Hoshi. He all of a sudden adds to that, right, that it should be b'mehira b'yameinu amen, this should kein hirotzin. He adds in this, that may it be speedily revealed, Mashiach,
No.
amen may it be your will.
Right.
Wait a second, I thought we're talking about a legal voik here. I thought we're talking about the Shulchan Aruch, a voik of Jewish law. Where does the Rambam come about, and he's throwing in a davening, a prayer, all of a sudden he's getting emotional, oh, may it be soon. Why doesn't he just say the law? The law is that the King Mashiach will make the last of this red heifer, yeah?
Yeah, because you bring it in King Mashiach, and that's the Geula Shleima.
This is true, but the Rambam, what's this?
Maybe if it happens right away.
This is a good point. But the Rambam, in theory, is supposed to only be focusing on halacha, on Jewish law. And he's interesting. The truth is, he's bringing law. Why? You hear Leib? Herr Slave, why is the Rambam bringing this in? This prayer for Mashiach? Because he's actually telling us in this prayer about Jewish. Herr Slave! Slave, tell me you can't listen to this without freaking out, okay? No kidding. So the Rambam is actually bringing that he's teaching us that not only do we have to make this red heifer, not only do we have to believe in Mashiach, but it's a mitzvah to actively wait for Mashiach and daven for him. This in itself is a mitzvah.
Right.
So that's why he's saying, may it be his will.
To be waiting for Mashiach.
Yeah, that it's not just intellectually, oh, I know Mashiach is going to... One second, let me straighten my yarmulke here. Yeah, not only I know Mashiach is going to come, but it's part of the mitzvah is dafka to be emotional about it, to daven for him, to wait for him every second, and to know that this leads to his coming, that davening for him leads to his coming. And one third thing also,
They cry out from leads to his coming.
yeah, and also that it has to be, that the Rambam is explaining us, that this has to be constant. Not, oh, okay, once in a while, you know what, I don't know if I can do it now, after all, Cedar Point or Hoishi Park, get it, Hoishi Park? Hoishi Park is closed, right, so I'm going to think, no, it's constant, even when you're in Hoishi Park,
Right,
you still have to always be praying and davening for Mashiach.
right.
So this is this part. Anyways, the next thing, what happens in our Parsha? What's next? The next thing I think is Miriam. Miriam passes away. You remember what happened then? Oh, I remember
does
it.
Aaron.
Roishi like it was
Not just
yesterday.
that, but
So does
the
that.
well dried up. Miriam's well dried up.
Yeah. So this is where the problem came. I
Yeah,
mean, of
the
course,
big
with a problem, the Miriam passed away. But I was there, Roishi, you know.
I know.
Oh yeah, I was there. I remember it like it was yesterday.
I know.
Anyways,
Baruch Dayan.
the well
We
dried
used to take a
up.
bath in that windmill.
The well dried up. And then what happened is the Yidden, of course, what do they always do when something happens? When anything happens, I'm telling you, Hoishi, there was
They
this
start
guy,
complaining.
I'm telling you, Hoishi Leib Helsmith. I'm telling Hoishi the story, but you can listen too. You listen too. There was this, I remember there was this one guy from the Shevet Naphtali, and he passed gas and the Jews complained. The Jews were complaining a lot these days. Anyways, they complained, there's no water, what's he gonna do? By the way, you want to know something interesting the Alter Rebbe says? Oishi, you know what the Alter Rebbe says about this? In Shulchan Aruch, by the way, in the work of Jewish law by the Alter Rebbe, Helsley, what he says? He says that actually there's a minhag, this is in Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law by the Alter Rebbe. He says that there's a minhag, a tradition, to get water from a well, whoever has a well available, every Motzei Shabbos, because every Motzei Shabbos, right after Shabbos lets out, some of Miriam's well goes into every well in the world. So you go and you collect this, and this cures many illnesses. But anyways, and of course, what did the Eibishter tell him? God told Moshe, take your stick and go speak to the rock.
To the waters.
Right?
Use your words.
Use your words. Right? Don't use physical violence. Anyways, but Moshe, he spoke to the rock, and of course we know.
Nothing came out.
But you know, he spoke to the wrong rock.
He walked up to the right
And
people.
you know how I know?
I get
You
back.
know how I know? Because
maybe he thought that other rocks would, the actual rock would hear him.
no, the reason I know it was the wrong rock is because that rock talked back. That
It's
rock,
not me, it's not me.
it was like, hey, oh yeah, Moshe, and Moshe was like, wait, this can't be the right rock.
This was Waxton.
But then he hit the rock,
Was actually-
and Abraham gave him a big punishment for this.
Right.
Right, so the question is really like this, is the Abraham tells him to go to the rock, so what's the big deal? So he hit it. Not only that,
No, but it says he punishes you according to your level. And this was the
this is
top
true,
level.
yeah, Moshe is a big level. But another thing also, is that, Moshe Rabbeinu, yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went, and you could say he made a mistake because he didn't realize it was the wrong rock, but here's what happens, is the Eibishter said, go lahakdisheni la'inei b'nei Yisrael, to make a kiddush Hashem, to make a sanctification of God's name. And when you have to make a sanctification of God's name, it's not enough to think about yourself and what you're doing. You have to think about the other people
The
also,
other people
and you have to think about what is going to make it. The things that come from your heart go to the heart. What is going to make it? The things that's going to make these people come closer to Torah. You can't just think about yourself, right? So therefore, it was a big deal, because you would think about it. Moshe Rabbeinu not only remember. First of all, he was told to go talk, and he spoke. It didn't work. Second of all, why did he hear Hoshi? Why did the Eibishter ask him to bring the staff? So he thought he should hit it. But that's the thing, is because when you're coming to bring another Jew closer, you have to think about him also.
That's right.
And how he's going to perceive this.
That's right.
So, and you have to make sure it's in a way that's going to be comfortable for him to come close to Yiddishkeit.
Exactly.
Anyways, the next thing, they come and they try to pass through the land of the Amalek. It doesn't go so well, Hoishi.
No, it's not going to go well.
Oh,
Were you there?
Oh, I was there, you know. But I'm telling you,
You couldn't make a deal?
oh, I tried.
Oh, okay.
I tried to make a deal. I was like, listen, Amalek, I'll make you you know the problem is I get
I'll even
greedy
pay for
sometimes.
the dues.
No, it wasn't me. I said, you know what, Amalek, I'll make you a deal. You let me go to your land, and I will give you nothing. What do you think about this? You know.
Deal.
Well, he's not going to use any water.
No, by the way, there's a very beautiful thing about this thing with Amalek. Okay, look about this parsha. Moshe sent messengers, right? What's made this? In other words, the spark of Moshe is in every Jew.
Right.
Okay, what happened next? He sent them from where? From Kodesh, which also means holy. That in other words, how do you become a messenger? How do you become like Moshe himself? Every one of us can do this because we are Pinta Yid. We have that holy part in our neshama. And where are we sending him to? He sent him to the king of Edom, right? In other words, when we go out to the nations that rule over the Jewish people during times of exile, right? And what does he say? He says, this is what your brother Israel says. What means your brother? Your brother means he looks like you.
Well, no,
Right, the brother looks
they all
like you.
came from the Zara.
Yeah, no, but also it's a meaning of he looks like you. In other words, you might think he's like you, because sometimes a Jew in Golos looks just like everybody else, right? And he says, no, you might think we're brothers, but no, we will go on the king's highway.
Right.
We, not your brothers. We, the children of the Eberster, we're going to go on the Eberster's highway. It's the Eberster's highway or no way at all.
Ah.
Verstehst? Anyways, the next thing is Aaron passed
But
away.
they said
also.
no. Why did they say no?
Well, because it was Amalek. Anyways, Aaron passed away. Then
There's
the,
a high tolls.
It wasn't
yeah,
a mullet.
and the people complained again, and they took some more. They they traveled around a little bit more, and then they had a war. They fought with Sichem, the king of and then with Og. Oh, I remember. Let me tell you something.
Then they said, if
Moshe
you
Rabbeinu-
deliver Sichain into our
Yeah.
hands, we'll sanctify all those cities.
But you remember then after they fought with Og, and let me tell you, Moshe Rabbeinu should have been in the NBA. Er is gejumped, and gehacked him in the ankle, and the whole big Og. But he was like, you ever see the Empire State Building?
I saw it.
And Moshe had jumped and gehacked him in the ankle, and the whole Og gefallen. Oh, he fell down. It was a big thing. And anyways, finally and this was the last thing it talks about is that they beat Og Melech Bashan and they were ready to go into Eretz Yisrael. That's the end of our part.
Wow, what a Parsha.
What an amazing parsha. It's such a
Wow.
bad parsha.
Yeah, that is packed.
It's big
Yeah,
stuff.
I'm old. I get tired just to say all
A
this.
lot of Sichas. A lot of Sichas.
The
Anyways,
main thing is,
yeah. What's the main thing? Sag mir, Reishi.
there's one main thing, and that is that they're on their way. This is the last major thing, and we're going to get in there. So that's good. They're showing we're still doing
Yeah, we
to
beat
it.
Sichem, we beat Og, we beat everybody already.
We beat everybody.
The
and
buttons
we
are
cleared
polished.
We cleared it off. We're ready to do it to it. Do it till we're satisfied.
That's right. Do it till we're satisfied with whatever
Whatever
it
it
is.
is. All right.
Yeah, because this is what is up in the station for something, information station. How you say? Come on, say it for me.
What's your name again?
The station, it's a sound information in the Midlands. That's what it is.
There we go. That's what I was looking for. Kevin, it was so good to see you all.
Okay, now it's
Back to you,
Mitzvah.
Thank you so much. Happy birthday to Hoishi. Happy birthday to Hoishi. Happy birthday to Hoishi. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Hoishi.
you. Don't sit on his face. It's 1 o'clock on your station for sound information.
Now, since these divine attributes in the world of Atzilus transcend human intellect, we said that there's no way human intellect can grasp how Hashem is unified in those attributes, then how do we give them names? How do we say there's a wisdom, there's an understanding, there's a mercy? How do we give a name to something that's higher than our intellect can grasp? And those names actually ascribe human attributes to levels of godliness. But in order for us to have some comprehension, even a diagrammatic comprehension, not a real comprehension, but just how it is, this is higher than that, and this is lower than that, and how Hashem works, we can approach it through understanding our own psychology, our intellect and emotions, and therefore permission was given to the sages of the Kabbalah to express divine attributes and powers metaphorically through physical attributes. But the metaphor of human psychology, which is our intellect and emotions, and how they're unified with us and part of our being, is only an example for us to have some idea, but can't be compared to the actual analog, which is the working of how Hashem is unified with his own attributes. And the second example, to understand how it's possible for Hashem to be unified with his attributes, is an example we brought before, how the sun and the ray of the sun are really one in their source. But really the unity of the sun and the ray isn't comparable to those spheros, to those divine attributes and their source. The analogy, that the metaphor of the sun and the ray refers only to the manner in which the sun's rays are united, related to the sun itself. This analogy makes it easier for us to comprehend the unity of the spheros with Hashem. The Kabbalists call the spheros, those divine attributes, lights, in order to communicate in a small measure, just like the light of the sun in the sun itself is completely nullified and unified with the sun. So the ray that comes out is called the light, and that light is emitted from a lamp from the source of the light. But when that light is inside the flame of the sun, when it's in its source, in the orb of the sun, it's completely united with it in an absolute unity. So it gives us an idea how Hashem's attributes are completely unified with him and their source. So therefore the sunlight, which will be emitted later, is really unified in the luminary. And just like that, and even more so, is the unity of Hashem's attributes with him, with his will and his wisdom in the world of Atzilus, are completely unified with Hashem, with his essence and his being. We get an idea how the ray of the sun doesn't exist. It's completely unified in the sun. However, Hashem's unity with his attributes is not exactly the same, like how the ray is fused with the sun. In a complete remote and concealed form from our comprehension, for his ways are higher than our ways. So these metaphors are just to give an idea how that thing works, but really we have to know and we have to be able to connect with faith, which is higher than intellect. Nevertheless, despite its superior amount of unity, since we have to give the ear the ability to hear, we can perceive and comprehend through these analogies, through the light of the sun, which is united and nullified in its source, which is the luminary of the sun, and how that ray is in the sun. It has no name for itself. The only thing that exists there is the sun. The Ray has no name. So too, all the attributes of Hashem, His will, His wisdom, they're not designated and called by these names.
That wasn't you.
What, can you get that kid, tell him to go into that box?
Go into the box.
Okay. So too, all the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His will and His wisdom are not designated and called by these names at all relative to Hashem. It's only Hashem there. There are no separate names, no separate attributes. Only in relation to the creatures, to the creations, which means the separate creations that feel separate from Hashem in the lower worlds of Bria, Sira, and Asiya, all of the higher and lower creatures, whether angels or people or insects, whatever seems to be separate from Hashem can relate to Hashem through these names. But for Hashem, there are no separate attributes. It's all one, it's all Hashem. And these creatures are brought into existence and given life and guided in their conduct by the Holy One, blessed be He. And that's what we said before was the lower unity. And through His will and His wisdom and understanding and knowledge, which guards themselves in His holy emotive attributes, in other words, His intellect guards itself into His kindness and into His judgment level. And they are called by these names only in relation to the worlds and the creations. But for Him, there are no separate names and no separate attributes. It's all one. It's just Hashem. Do we have a nigun?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
We always have a nigga. All right. Hey, Mort, lady, you ready for jam on E major?
Jam on E major.
Oh, that was a funky one. There we go. Jam on E major. Come on, baby.
Jam on E major. Wow, that's a great.
Let me hear some volume, lady. Come on, baby. Make the song happen. Give me some volume. It's all. Before he even picks up the thing, just when he's putting it on, it's already rock and roll. Yeah.
dress itself into the emotive powers will come out in the 6 days of creation. The attribute of kindness comes out on the first day where Hashem created light. And he called light day. And the second day is where and that revelation of kindness on the first day is included of all the other 10 attributes. If it would come out undiluted, then there would not be able to be light in our physical world. And the second day, Hashem's attribute of holding back and judgment came out, and it was the idea of the separation of the waters. But even the separation of the waters, which is a gevura thing, which is a holding back thing, was for a purpose of kindness, that the dry land should appear and will have a place to exist, and so on with all 6 of the attributes. And now we're going to say good night, dear friend.
Wait, first. Ready, everybody? Ready, everybody? You can see everyone?
The chef.
You can see everybody? Okay. Happy birthday